Here comes the Minnesota American Legion Riders on their annual legacy run to gather funds for the American Legion Legacy Scholarship. All for the kids, as they say, and... Wait, what? You haven't heard of the Minnesota Legacy Scholarship Run? Well, it all started with 9/11. The American Legion realized that the children of those serving on and after 9/11 needed to be taken care of. And so, the American Legion Legacy Scholarship was born. Members of the Minnesota American Legion family have participated on the National American Legion Legacy Run from the beginning. But a new group of 6 attended in 2009. And after this, Steve Sullivan was asked to form a Minnesota Run. And thus, the Minnesota Legacy Run was born. The first run was done in 2010. It started at the Anoka American Legion Post and cut a spiral through the state of Minnesota, stopping in all 10 districts, ending in Duluth. Several members of the run then continued on the journey to the American Legion National Convention held in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They helped Minnesota turn in $22,000 that year. In 2011, the Minnesota Legacy Scholarship Run was broken into 2 weekends. This allowed for more participation and better scheduling. It also allowed for a North Run and a South Run, soon to be called by it the catchier Not So North Run. This year also saw the start of visits to the Minnesota veterans' homes. This year, visits to Hastings and Fergus Falls were made, and also a run into the St. Cloud VA. Another memorable event was arriving in the town of Middle River and finding the whole town had shut down to welcome us in our endeavor. The Department of Minnesota turned in $30,000 that year at the National Convention. In 2012, an East Side and West Side run was tried. The Minnesota Veterans Homes in Fergus Falls and Laverne were visited. Laverne is also where we discovered that the therapy dog there really liked the animal tail Diane had hanging off of her vest. We also began the tradition at stopping in Bovey, Minnesota, at the Philip Wendorski Jr. Memorial Ball Field. With the money collected on this year's run, turn-in at the National Convention was $39,650. In 2013, saw a return to the North and Not So North runs. We visited the Fergus Falls Veterans Home, along with the Oak Hills Living Center in New Ulm, where the residents greeted us, and enjoyed our visit so much they started their own fundraisers for the scholarship as well. We also started a tradition that when there is a stop at a veterans home or any other living center, to try to give one of the residents a ride on a motorcycle, usually just around the parking lot. The joy on their face is worth the effort. And at the National Convention this year, a total of $51,000 was donated to the American Legion Legacy Scholarship. "2014 was our 5th annual Legacy Run. In honor of our 5th year, we set a goal of $55,000 to celebrate that 5th year. We again decided to visit all 10 districts over the course of both weekends. We started the run at the Minneapolis Veterans Home and included a visit to the Laverne Veterans Home as well. We ended the run in Coon Rapids, where it was announced that we had once again beaten our goal. And in fact, at the National Convention, we were able to turn in a total of $87,600. This past year, we were able to visit the final veterans home on the list that we had not previously made it to. We made the rainy trek up to Silver Bay and made a soggy visit with the residents there. In fact, the North Run received the nickname the Wet Run for the rain that just seemed to follow us most of the weekend. We made all our stops. We collected the funds that had been raised, and in the end, surpassing the goal that had been set, we were able to turn in at National Convention $103,794. In fact, since the inception of the scholarship, Minnesota has turned in over $340,000 to the American Legion Legacy Scholarship. We can only go up from there. But it would not be possible without the American Legion family. Keep in mind that all the riders on the Minnesota Legacy Run pay their own way for food, gas, and lodging. The fundraising that really happens at each post, unit, squadron, and chapter are really what makes us reach our goals. See, the Minnesota Legacy Run does raise some funds on its own, but it's those funds that have been raised throughout the year by the American Legion family that allows the Department of Minnesota to lead the nation in donations. So thank you, and keep it up. We now have a reputation to uphold of leading the nation in scholarship donations. Well, as we ride into Walker, Minnesota, with our American Legion Riders Flag Escort, thank you for learning more about the Minnesota Legacy Run and the American Legion Legacy Scholarship. If you want to help, volunteer, or participate in the run, feel free to contact a member of the Minnesota Legacy Run Planning Committee. Look at their Facebook page or their website at mnlegacyrun.org. To turn in your donations to the American Legion Legacy Scholarship, make checks payable to the American Legion Foundation and place in the memo line Fund 84. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the run.